A lot of the reason why birth doesn't work is because of 5 things. And I'm going to tell you what those things are in a minute. But first, I'm going to ask you a question. If you could have your birth any way you wanted it, any way at all, your dream birth with no pain or no interventions, or just having more control, would you do it? Because if that's you, if you want more control of your birth, I'm going to tell you something. You can have it. You can get the birth you want without having to fight, beg, or compromise. And you can do it even if you're older. If you're in your 40s or in your late 30s, you can still have the birth that you want. You don't have to go with the typical protocol of being induced or being pushed into a C-section or being told that you're too old or too fat. Even if you have gestational diabetes, even if you have high blood pressure, I'm going to be sharing some stories with you of moms who have had these things. Even if you've had previous cesareans, you can still get the birth you want without having to fight, beg, or compromise.
I was about 30 weeks pregnant or so with my 4th. I had 2 C-sections, which they weren't emergency C-sections. They were just the doctors not knowing what to do. And so I really wanted to have my last birth to be as natural as possible. If I could do a VBAC, I felt really just cut down and disrespected by the healthcare industry from the get-go with this pregnancy. It was not inclusive at all. I'm a bigger person, and as soon as I stepped into the midwife's office, immediately I was basically hit with a fat stick. and it was terrible. It was horrible and humiliating, and just and so I wanted to take my power back, and I wanted to make sure that I could have an empowered pregnancy, and that my little girl came into the world as safe and as healthy as possible.
I had 2 previous C-sections. One, my first one was failed induction, of course, inpatient doctor. I didn't know, and I was 18. I didn't know anything. Really, I trusted the medical team, because that's what we're engraved to do in our brains, is to trust them. And so she induced me at 41 weeks, started Pitocin. 3 hours into the Pitocin, she came in and broke my water. Obviously had no time for my body to react to anything. I was bedbound, wasn't encouraged to get up and move around and walk around and kind of help my body work. And then she came in, it was 26 hours of labor with him. She came in, and my husband was laying on the floor on the cushions from the little couch that they had in there. She comes in with the scrubs, kicks the cushions, and says, "Get up, we're doing a C-section," and threw the scrubs on him. So that was kind of like already a little traumatizing, because we just woke up out of nowhere, and they wheeled me off to the C-section, and I didn't know what was going on, really. I didn't know I could fight. I didn't know anything.
Once I got through all of my trauma and I got myself all sorted, I was doing a lot of work just as part of my healing, because originally, after my experience, I didn't want to have more children. I didn't want to do that again. I wanted to understand birth, because what I had experienced was not birth in any sense of the word. I mean, a baby was born, but that's about it. I asked myself what I truly wanted, because I knew that if I decided not to have more kids because of my experience, then I was giving all the power to those people who had done what they had done to me, and I was letting them make that decision for me, and that was not okay, because those people, they went home at the end of the day, they patted themselves in the back for doing a job well done. They did their job. The mom was alive and baby was alive, and that's all that mattered to them.
But the problem is that nobody's been taught how to do this. And a lot of the childbirth education that you receive and a lot of the people that you follow aren't teaching this. So I am not an expert at birth, okay? Yes, I do have a lot of experience. Yes, I happen to have been studying birth for the last 10 years, and I've helped hundreds of women to be able to go on and have their empowered births. I've written a book called Your Empowered Birth. Birth is my life. I love it. I've given birth before. I've had 2 kids. I had a physiological birth in the hospital. It was a natural birth. There was no medication. There was no interventions done to me. And the next one, she was born completely at home, almost completely unassisted, because the midwife didn't get there until I was pushing. Okay, so I've had those experiences. I have experienced physiological birth. What is physiological birth? That is a true natural birth. So usually when you're asking for a natural birth, you don't want any interventions, right? And you want to be able to control the experience. Well, a physiological birth is different from the typical natural birth. So your baby actually is running the show here. You don't actually have full control over everything. However, you can still get the birth you want without having to fight, beg, or compromise. Just because birth is unpredictable does not mean that you can't still have some control over it. So even though you're surrendering, even though maybe your baby comes a little bit later than you planned, or maybe you develop a complication, or maybe your baby is bigger, or maybe your baby decides that they're going to be a little stubborn and they're going to shift into a position that you don't really like them in, and your labor might be a little bit longer, you can still work with that. So why did I say though earlier that I'm not an expert? Because obviously I have a lot of information about birth. Obviously I've been in the birth community for a very long time. I have friends in the birth community. So I have these connections. So obviously I've got some knowledge, right? So who is the expert? It's you. You're the expert. I know it's a revolutionary concept, but you are actually your own best decision maker. You are the expert on you. You're the expert on your likes. You are the expert on your dislikes. You are the expert on all your fears. You're the expert on what is going to feel best to you. You're the expert on what you want in your birth. You're the expert on how your body feels, how your baby is doing. You know everything. Okay? You know everything. And this is so revolutionary to what we have in our society, because oftentimes you're told, even especially as a first-time mom, you're told you don't know anything. It's your first baby. What do you know, right? But I'm here to tell you that you actually do know. You know enough to make your own decisions. So with your birth, it's not going to be perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect birth. There's going to be hard parts. There's going to be moments when you're going to think, why the hell did I do this? You're going to question it, but then you're going to get through it, and you're going to come out the other side knowing that you made all of the decisions for yourself, that they were right for you. And you're going to be like, oh my God, this was the best birth ever. Like I feel in my power. I feel so confident. I can do anything. Like that's what an empowered birth does for you. So the story with my first is this. I was a mom who had been terrified of childbirth. I was someone who used to hide my eyes and be like, let me know when the scary part's over, because I was just so afraid of the pain. I was afraid of tearing. I was afraid of ruining my vagina. I was afraid of getting an epidural. I was afraid of that big giant needle in my spine. I was also afraid of the IV. I didn't want the IV. I myself do not like hospitals. I don't like that medical stuff. And I only do it if I feel that it's actually a necessary thing. I recognize that sometimes in birth and sometimes in life, there are things that we need to do because it is necessary, because it is a tool that will help us, because all of our other options have been exhausted. And that's okay. But the way that birth is being taught right now, it's very medicalized. It's very pathologized. It's telling you that your body is broken and needs help.
I did labor a bit with my first, but my water never broke and I never progressed. They did a sweep in the middle of labor, which I swear put me back another, couple centimeters. And they also they just wouldn't let me labor past a certain point. They basically strapped me to the bed and they were just like, okay, we need to monitor you now, and you're not allowed to move and you're not allowed to eat. And I lost all my energy and all of my power at that point. Of course you're exhausted. Of course all of your reserves are gone. And so it got to that place where I was just like, I don't even care anymore. Like, just tell me what needs to happen. And that's the moment, you know, you lose all of your power, you lose all of your decision-making faculties. And honestly, I didn't know any better. I thought that the midwives were advocating on my behalf, and they really weren't. Yeah, which is unfortunate. So,
but I did know when I got pregnant with my second, I wanted a VBAC. And that was my intention with him, with my second, was of course to have a VBAC. Come to find out again, after I did the workshop and he was already born, of course, that I had, again, more rights than what I knew. I went for a NST at 38 weeks because they recommended that we do an NST. I had a healthy pregnancy. Had I known anything then, I would have declined the NST. There was no need for it. There was no medical need for it. So they did the NST, and I was having probably some Braxton Hicks contractions or some prodromal labor, and his heart rate was dropping, of course, which I know now is normal when you're having a contraction. So they used, they feared me into having another C-section. They sent me to L&D, and the doctor came in and she's like, oh, his heart rate's dropping and I don't like how it looks, so we need to get him out now. We need to have a C-section.
With my birth plan, because my first birth, a lot of the trauma happened because of all of the interventions. For this birth, I did not want any interventions at all. Actually, I didn't want any interventions. And so I said that I didn't want to be induced. I either was going to go into labor on my own, or if I had a medical reason why I shouldn't be pregnant anymore, then I was going to schedule a cesarean, and it was going to be a last minute planned cesarean. And so this question of induction kept coming up. Because medically that was what they were recommending for me. They don't really recommend cesarean unless you actually need it. They would prefer to do an induction as a first resort. And so even though I said that I did not want any kind of induction, they kept bringing it up. It was mostly that doctor who was bringing it up, but it was other doctors as well that I consulted with. And that was really frustrating because I said from the very beginning that I did not want to be induced, that I was not going to choose that.
And the reason why you've been taught this is because society expects you to keep following the same things over and over that are going to lead you to a birth that you don't want. I call this the McDonald's restaurant dilemma. So what is that? Well, basically the McDonald's restaurant dilemma is this. Say that you're craving a nice juicy steak at a 5-star restaurant. You've been thinking about this for a long time, and you've really, really honed what you want. You know exactly how you want to order that steak. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to sink into this. So you have this idea of where you want to go and get this steak. But then you don't actually know where that restaurant is. You're in a new city. You just moved here. So you have no idea where to get the best 5-star restaurant steak. You don't know where you're going. You're in a new town, and you have gone on to Yelp trying to find where the best place to get the steak is. And you maybe even asked some local Facebook groups about where to get the best steak. And people are just giving you different ideas of what you could get. You're asking people where to get the best steak, where to get that steak that you've been dreaming of, this mouth-watering steak. And you know exactly how it's going to taste and how it's going to be cooked. And you just know that it's out there. You know, because you've heard rumors that there's this restaurant out there. You just don't remember the name of it, and you don't remember how to get there, and you don't know. So as you're driving, you're trying to describe it to people, and people are like, you know, like, I've never heard of this before. Or they're saying, you know, I think I know what you're talking about. So how about you go and check out this place here? I don't remember exactly how to get there, but I think it's on this road. And then you keep talking to people, trying to get directions. And suddenly somebody comes up and they're like, I know, I can help you. I've been helping people find really good steak for years. And like, I have like 20 years of experience about steak, and I'm just the expert on steak. So I can take you. Now, the thing is, when somebody says that they're the expert, but they didn't actually ask you what you're looking for, and they're not completely granular about it, you still need to use your own intuition. So this person is not saying that they'll help you get there. They're not saying that they'll guide you. They're not saying that they'll give you information. They're not giving you the information to go out and get your own steak. What they're doing is they're saying, go sit in the passenger seat and I'll drive you there. But because you don't know any better, you're thinking, oh my God, what a relief. I've been driving for hours trying to find this place. I'm so hungry. I just want this so bad. Please just take over for me. So you get into the passenger seat and you're no longer in control. You can't see the road marks. You can't see where they're driving you. You're just blindly trusting them. And this is when you suddenly find yourself in a McDonald's drive-through. And you're like, what's going on here? I asked for steak. Why are we at McDonald's? I asked for steak. And they're like, shh, it's okay. It's okay. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. There's a really good hamburger here. You'll love it. It'll fill you up. I know you're really hungry. And I promise you, like, it's a really good hamburger. It's fine. And you're like, but I wanted steak. And they're like, I know, but you're really, really hungry now. So we really don't have time to go and get you that steak. So instead, I took you to McDonald's and you're going to get fed. So it's okay. And a full tummy is what matters, right? Like, you just need to be full right now. You're really, really hungry. And so you get a hamburger. And you're like, what the hell happened? I asked for steak. I was looking for steak. I did all the right things. I asked people where to get this, and I got McDonald's. And you're probably wondering, why would anybody trust somebody to drive them when you're in a town that you don't know anyone, and this stranger has just offered to drive you to a steakhouse, but you don't know that they actually know where they're going? Guess what? When you go and trust somebody else to give you the birth that you want, and you aren't in the driver's seat, that's exactly what you're doing. You're getting the McDonald's version of your birth plan. And I don't want that for you.
So of course, me and my husband are scared, like, okay, well, my baby's gonna die, like something's gonna happen to my baby, we need to go now. So we went in and had a C-section with him also. After reading the reports, come to find out, she put on the report that I had informed consent. I was never given informed consent about anything. Also that I declined induction, I declined Pitocin. I was never given the option for induction or Pitocin. Not that I would want Pitocin, but I was never given the option.
They went home and went about their lives and never thought of me again. And like my experience was insignificant to their life. And they didn't even remember me. In fact, I met one of the nurses again, and she did not remember me.
A lot of it comes from fear, first of all. You're afraid that you don't know any better. You're afraid that you're going to make a mistake. You're afraid that you're going to make a wrong turn. You're afraid that you're going to get the wrong information, or you're just going to do something wrong and it's not going to work out. So you go and trust the experts. But the experts are also afraid of things. They're afraid of being sued. I'm just going to say it. They're afraid of being sued. They're also afraid because of the fact that they have this idea that they control things. They're afraid of things going wrong. They're afraid of your own body too, because they've been taught to pathologize birth. And a lot of childbirth educators, they get this wrong. Independent childbirth educators, we try to teach as much as we can, but sometimes people miss the mark. Sometimes it's not the exact education that you need. The thing about the right education is not a one-size-fits-all either. Okay? So just because you want to learn about physiological birth, you might have other things that you need to also focus on. Maybe you need a better mindset. Maybe you had a traumatic experience. Maybe you had a C-section before and you need some more targeted information about VBAC. Maybe you have high blood pressure. Maybe you're older. Maybe this is like your rainbow baby and you just want to have the best experience possible and you want to have that health and you have other things that you want. So the right education is not just about birth. It's about pulling all of that together and getting everything that you need. And Jenny did this as well because she had high blood pressure and she didn't want to have the complications happen again. She went out and she got the right education about that. She also had gestational diabetes. So she went out and she got the right education to help her with her diet because the nurses at the clinic, they said, well, 50% of our clients end up on insulin and 50% don't. And Jenny was like, I want to be the 50% that don't.
I needed to believe in myself first and foremost, and I needed to remember what was true. And what was true is that I could have any birth that I wanted, and that the things that these doctors were saying could happen were not necessarily the things that were going to happen. And that's a really important distinction because none of it happened. none of it. Even the things that I was anticipating happening didn't happen. Just because they believed that I might end up on insulin, that was not what was true for me. And just because they believed that I should get an induction, that's not what was true for me. And just because they believed that I was going to have a uterine rupture, that's not what was true for me. And just because they believed that I was too old and whatever other reason they believed that I was going to end up with a cesarean anyway, that's not what was true for me. And that never was true for me.
This is the way that the maternity care system works. This is the way the medical system works. They go by one size fits all. But you are a unique individual. It doesn't work. So you need to get that right education. You need to be able to ask the right questions to find the right education. And you need to have the right facilitators to help you with that. You need to have the right support around you so that when you're starting to doubt yourself, they can lift you back up again. They can get you out of your fear. And here's the other thing. Your right support might not be the right support right now. Your partner is scared and your friends and family are scared and other moms in the mom groups are scared. So when you go and say that you're going to go and have your birth a certain way, that's not the standard of care, or you go and you plan a home birth. Like I got this too. When I was planning my home birth, my aunt kept calling me over and over again, at least a couple of months, like every few months, I would get this phone call from her. And she would be like, I still think it would be best if you go to the hospital. This is your first baby. Now, I wasn't going to listen to her because I am a very stubborn person. And I just knew that I'm having a home birth. As long as nothing goes wrong, I'm having a home birth. Did you catch that? As long as nothing goes wrong. Here's the thing about the going wrong. That's also pathologized, and it's built into our idea of birth that something's going to go wrong. We focus so much on something going wrong that we don't focus on something going right. And when you focus on all the things that can go wrong and not all the things that go right, your mindset starts to shift into that fear. So when people say to you, Like maybe your chances of having a vaginal birth, they say, are slim to none. Well, there's a chance. There's always a chance. Maybe it's not going to happen the way that they say it's going to happen. If you actually get the numbers, and this is where the right education comes in, oftentimes those really scary statistics, like the ones of the induction being better for you at 41 weeks or 39 weeks, as they now have with the ARRIVE trial, it's actually not what you think it is.
And so with this little guy, with my third, now I'm here with my third pregnancy, and I'm just like, no, I'm having him natural. Like, I'm gonna have him natural. I didn't really know anything about like physiological birth until I did the workshop, and I'm like, wait, that's what I want. You know, like, I want a physiological birth because my body has to work. There's no way it doesn't work.
The next thing that you need to understand is that if your care provider or your doula or your childbirth educator is putting fear onto you, that is adding to it. So that's the next part, is the right facilitators. If you're not getting the right education, and the right education comes from the right facilitators and the right people to learn from, then you're just going to continue to have that perpetual fear. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. Because if you're in that wrong environment, first of all, you're getting information about those care providers and what their recommendations are. This is why mom groups can be detrimental to you. The way that I created the Empowered Birth community was like the anti-mom group. It was everything that I hated out of it. So I took the mommy shaming and I said, I'm not having any of that in here because it doesn't work. And I took the misinformation. I said, I'm not having any of that here. I'm bringing in the right education. I'm bringing in the right people to teach the right education. I'm going to build a community in which we all get to learn from each other and we all lift each other up, because that is something that you often don't see in the mom groups. What do you see in the mom groups is, hey, can I have a birth without the epidural? And then you get a whole bunch of people in the comments. Some of them will say that you can do it. Others will say it's really, really hard and you can do it. Others will say they would never do that. And others will even say, oh, the epidural is not that bad. So if you express that you're afraid of that needle going in your spine, they'll say, oh, you won't even care, because once you have that pain of the labor, you won't care about that needle. Well, guess what? A lot of moms who have gone and had natural births, they never ever wanted that needle, but they also had the right mindset and they had the right education and they had the right environment to facilitate that. And so when you're in those mom groups, you really need to be careful, because a lot of time they just perpetuate the same fear over and over and over again. There's that fear, and it's in our culture. Look at what's on TV. Look at what's in the movies. Look at what you see in books, even like 50 Shades of Grey. At the very end of 50 Shades Freed, they had, like, she had a traumatic cesarean, and then they made it so normalized. I have a feeling that the author was trying to work through something, but like it was just so common. And as a birth doula and educator and someone who's been in the birth community for 10 years and has seen this stuff over and over, I was just sitting there and I was reading this and I'm like, first of all, this was a very unnecessary thing to throw into the chapter. So that's why I knew that the author had to be working through something. It didn't add anything to it. But at the same time, I'm like, this story is so freaking familiar. And I've heard it hundreds of times. And I know exactly why that it went that way. And like, I don't even know if the author even knew that what happened to her character, or what probably happened to her in one of her births that she was processing, was like this is just so common that you're told, you know, you've been pushing for the last hour, or you've been laboring for 12 hours and nothing seems to be happening. There's no baby yet. So we're going to get things going, but now the Pitocin's not working. And now we're going to give you the epidural because the Pitocin's not working. Maybe that will help, but no, now the baby's in distress. So now you're off for a C-section And now we saved your life. So aren't you so happy that you were in the hospital? I'm sorry, but that is just, it's the worst story. And it's also the most familiar. And there's a reason for it. And it started the moment you planned your pregnancy and your birth, and you didn't follow what I'm teaching you, which is you need to have these 5 pillars, is what I call them. I call them the 5 pillars of empowered birth. So after you have the right facilitator, the last one is you need the right support. So these are the 5 pillars. Is you need to have the right mindset, you need to have the right education, you need to have the right environment, you need to have the right facilitators, and you need to have the right support. But the reason you're afraid is because the facilitators that you've been learning from, they're also scared. Okay, they've also grown up in the same cultural context of birth that you have. They have also been indoctrinated. If you've got a nurse or a midwife or a doctor, they've been indoctrinated into a system where birth is pathologized.
I think, well, it's, first of all, it's kind of important to like classify that. So I had Braxton Hicks with the twins, and then it moved into predominant labor, which I didn't even know. So having that distinction going in was really important. And knowing this time, like what I was actually experiencing was really, for lack of a better word, empowering. It really was, because then I had the knowledge of, oh, this is supposed to happen. Okay, this is good. This is natural. This is fine. It was frustrating, I'm not going to lie, because you're just like, yes, I'm going into labor. No, I'm not going into labor, because it's labor, but it's not labor. And so I had to mentally separate myself from anticipating too much. Doing what you need to do, like rest as much as possible, hydrate as much as possible, and just envision, you know, what you want to happen, and a safe birth, and, you know, that your body is doing exactly what it needed to do. And so I did a lot of reading, and I made sure that, like on the nights when I was kept up with a predominant labor, that I was watching shows that weren't, you know, anxiety inducing and weren't intense. And I was trying to, you know, create playlists, relaxing playlists, and again, just mentally prepare and use that time, even though sometimes it was really frustrating, but to utilize that time for good and, you know, for the end game. Jenny, who's also part of our team, was so helpful with like the dates and everything, or yeah, the dates.
Yes, dates.
Those were phenomenal. And actually the days that I didn't have any, my body started to crave them. And so that actually helped with the intensity of the predominant labor and making it, I swear that that's what kind of pushed me over the edge, were the dates and the red raspberry tea. And then again, just mentally relaxing, because anytime that I ended up having stressful situations happen, like when my parents arrived a little too early and I was, you know, banging heads with my dad, who was anxious and stressed, and like his energy is just so intense, and it caused my body to slow down and not be in labor anymore, in predominant labor. And so that was really frustrating for me. So that's when I kicked him out of the house, and I'm like, go back home. We'll see you later. Just even having that calming presence of, okay, like it's okay to be in labor. It is okay to be, you know, waiting for this baby. It's totally fine. You know, it's an estimated guess. Your due date is not when the baby's supposed to come. I mean, in my case, it did, but that's not always, obviously, it's never the case for most people. The mental game is the biggest thing. I can't even talk more about it. It's just, you have to get your mind right. Your mindset is 99% of it, I think.
Now my little guy's here. It was amazing. I know I didn't really want a hospital birth. I want to have him at home. I don't want a hospital birth because I don't feel safe there. You know, so there are some people that feel safe having a hospital birth, which is totally fine, but I didn't feel safe. I don't trust the medical personnel. I don't. And I had a feeling if I were to attempt my VBAC at the hospital, that it wouldn't go how I wanted it, and possibly would have ended up in another C-section, which I was not going to have. So we decided, me and my husband decided, okay, we're having this baby at home. And we did it. I had him at 40 weeks and 3 days. So of course my water broke. Me and my husband were excited, you know, this is really happening. Just knowing that my body's already working really just made me feel that much better and confident in my decision of having him at home. So we just, when my water broke, my husband got the pool and everything ready. And I kind of just bounced on the yoga ball for a little bit to try to help things not really speed up, but kind of like go how it's supposed to. And I just kind of, with each wave, I just went through it. To me, for being the first time my body actually labored on its own, wasn't that long, but it, you know, labors can last as long as they need to last. But just the way my contractions were and my body letting me, I was able to rest in between contractions, take little naps to help me get, you know, a little bit more energy, and just having the right support really helped things go smooth. And that's, I know, like a really main thing is you really need to have that support. Because if I didn't have that support, I probably would have gave up and went to the hospital. And then it probably would have again ended in another C-section. Going through it, and then finally at the end, when you're like, okay, I'm done, get this baby out, that's how I knew that it was time. And he just came right out. I had him in the pool. So it was pretty amazing.
It was 4 o'clock and I felt like my water broke. And we get to the store and I said, I don't mean to alarm you, but I feel like my water may have broken. I'm not sure, but my water may have broken. So then we're wandering around the store and I feel like I'm leaking. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm leaking and I need to go home. So let's like finish shopping as fast as possible because I'm pretty sure that this baby is gonna come pretty soon. So then we get home and probably like within the hour the contractions started from when my water broke. And they were pretty strong contractions. They were good contractions. Most of the amniotic fluid came out in the first couple hours. So they were really good contractions. And then what I did is I went into my room and I turned off the lights. I just had like this kind of orange comforting light, and I had a playlist of like hypnobirthing songs. I just liked them, so that's what I picked for my music. And I laid in bed and just listened to this music and enjoyed the peace and quiet of my room, and just I guess I don't want to say enjoyed my contractions, but I was having really good contractions. And the way that I got through them is whenever the contraction started and it was feeling really intense, I just imagined my baby already in my arms, and then the pain went away. And then the contraction would subside, and then I was fine until the next contraction. And then I did that again exactly the same way. And I just kept doing that until midnight. That was when I had my first active labor contraction. And like, I knew what was happening in my body because I had gone through that prenatal course, and I understand the different stages of labor and what was happening in my body and what to expect. So then at midnight, I started to shake, and then I had a really strong contraction, and I said to myself, okay, I'm in active labor. The shaking is my cervix opening. And so I talked to Tony and I said, call the doula, get her here, call the hospital, tell them like we're having a baby.
You have this idea now that there's two key components to this. You need to identify what your fears are first, so that then you can go and get the knowledge that you need to avoid having that fear anymore. Like, you might still have things come up, but if you have the right education, you can kind of unlearn things. So the fear, tension, pain cycle works like this. The more afraid you are of birth, the more you psych yourself up, the more your body tenses up, the more you can't relax, the more your body can't open, the more things don't work properly, and the more you're resisting what needs to happen. So birth is a feminine act, and the feminine energy is all about surrender. It's about releasing. And your body is literally surrendering and releasing when you're in labor and birth. So if you're tensing up during a contraction and freaking out, it's gonna hurt.
So at that point, the active labor contractions, they were a lot more difficult. Imagining my baby already in my arms, that was no longer working. So I went into the shower and I just stood in the shower with the hot water like pouring straight onto my lower back. And I just stood in the shower laboring like that. For most of it, I got to a point, and this was probably when I was starting to near transition, where the water wasn't feeling good anymore. So then I came out of the shower and I tried to go on my hands and knees on the bed because I was feeling tired after standing for it was like close to 4 hours. I was standing in the shower, and I tried to go on my hands and knees, but the baby was like, no, we want to stay upright. So that wasn't working. So then it was right then where my doula arrived at the house. And so at that point, I just sat upright on the toilet, going through my contractions, and she was helping me to get through them. She was helping me to slow my breath down, because as the contraction came, it was really intense. I was shaking, I was breathing really fast. I was questioning why I had done this to myself. Like, I was questioning why birth was so painful, like my own existence, how we even exist as a human race. And then as the contractions started to subside, I was like, no, I can do this. This is fine. And then between contractions, I felt completely normal. Like, I felt like I wasn't even in labor.
So you can teach yourself anything. You can learn the skills that you need for birth, and you can do it in a way that speaks to you. But here's the thing, is that birth is also instinctual.
It was the strangest thing. But I guess for anyone who's had a physiological birth experience, that they understand that that's normal. That's what's actually normal when it comes to birth. So then at 4 a.m. I had my first pushing contraction. And then actually I couldn't even talk. I'm pretty sure I was like in my head saying, okay, we need to go to the hospital. And then my doula was like, do you want to go to the hospital, or do you want to wait a little bit more? And I was like, no, we need to go right now. And then she was like, okay, Tony, I think it's time to maybe think about going to the hospital. And I was like, no, we need to go right now. And so like they're trying to figure out like, you know, do we have all the stuff in the car? Like, let's get some clothes on Jenny, because I had been in the shower and I didn't have clothes on. And they're just kind of, you know, getting things together. And I asked Tony for my shoes. And then I watched him go out the door. And I was like, where is he going? Where are my shoes? And the doula was like standing there with them in her hand, like in front of me. But yeah, we left for the hospital at 4 a.m. and we got to the hospital at 4:30. And like the car ride was really interesting because I was told it was going to be the worst car ride of my life. The doula gave me a TENS machine to use in the car to make it a little bit more manageable. But the car ride was actually great. When I had the contraction, I used the TENS machine because like they were intense, pushing contractions. And then between contractions, I fell asleep. And Tony was like, is she asleep? Like, what's going on here?
I think it knew too, like, okay, we can't do this that fast. And then when he was born also, he had the cord wrapped around 2 times. So I think my body also was like, okay, we got to take our time and not rush him out, you know? So yeah, your body definitely knows what it's doing.
You do need to learn from some people. And that's the next key component, which is the right education. Where can you find that right education, and how to make sure that the childbirth class that you're picking isn't going to derail your birth plan? So one of my favorite myths to debunk is about the induction after 41 weeks, because people say, well, you know what, the placenta deteriorates and there's a double the chance of stillbirth. Okay, but double as opposed to what? When you're looking at it as 1 per 1,000 going to 2 per 1,000, that doubles. 1 goes to 2, double, right? But it's per 1,000. But oftentimes you're not told that part. You're just told the risk doubles or your risk increases by 50%. Well, sometimes the risk can increase by 50%, but it's such a small number that it's like, okay, but it's like this tiny, tiny little dot. And then I have like this bigger picture of all the things that could go right. But they don't want you to do that because the maternity care system is based on profit, convenience, and liability. And our whole system is based on the idea that your body is broken, that you need to not worry your pretty little head, that you need to trust the experts, and you just have to defer to what everybody else tells you. And it takes your power away from you. You know that expression, leave your dignity at the door? Throw it out the window, because you don't actually have to leave your dignity at the door. If your birth feels really undignified, they're doing something wrong. Not you doing something wrong, they're doing something wrong, because you need to feel like the most empowered goddess. Even if you're having a C-section, you need to feel the most cared for. Even if you're having stitches after having a 3rd-degree tear, you need to feel respected and seen and cared for in that moment. You don't want to feel degraded. You don't want to feel embarrassed. You don't want to feel that contraction in your body, not the labor contraction, but like the actual tightness of this doesn't feel good and I feel really small and powerless, but I should probably just be okay with it because this is what happens to everyone. That's why we have a 45% birth trauma rate. It's not that birth is scary. It's not that birth doesn't work. It's that our culture has perpetuated that fear into you. Okay, so now what do you do about it? All right, so here's what you need to start doing. You need to recognize through the 5 pillars of empowerment how to get out of your fear. That means that you need to start cultivating a really strong mindset. I can unlearn anything that I need to. I can examine what's true for me. I can sit with my truth. I can sit with my emotions. I can recognize when my fear comes up and then I can do it anyway. I can face my fear and do it anyway. Yes, there's going to be hard parts and you can get through them. When you have that strong mindset, then it doesn't matter what anyone else says. You're determined to do this. The next one, of course, you need to have the right education to do that. So you go through this and you're thinking to yourself, where can I get this information that I need to start getting past my fear? So if you're thinking to yourself, where can I find the information? Who can I talk to see who's done it? You're already getting that right education. You're already getting past your fear. The next one, of course, is where do you need to learn? Where do you need to feel safe in order to not feel that fear, to not let that fear stop you? Because if you have the right environment around you, then you're going to be less likely to stay in that fear, right?
I created like a lotus of space for myself, like in the bathroom and also just in part of our bedroom, just so that was a space for me, and that my brain could go there when I was really overwhelmed or really stressed. And I'd be just like, no, okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom for a while. And I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to focus and I'm just going to relax and just, put all of my energy into this baby and a healthy birth and all of that. And so that really, really solidified a lot of things that happened and how they played out.
I've created this incubator so that when you're afraid, you've got support around you. You've got an environment where everybody is having empowered births and everybody is, maybe they've had a traumatic experience, but they're working through it. They're getting through their trauma.
Well, then Jenny found me the postpartum doula. I was kind of at my wit's end, and there was some tension and still is in our relationship with my husband. And so it was kind of an ultimatum situation where he said that if I didn't get help, that there was just some bad stuff that would happen. And so so Jenny contacted the postpartum doula, who is amazing, contacted her the one night that we were chatting, and she got back to me that same night. It was late at night too, like it was like 10, quarter after 10 already, and she messaged me and we chatted, and she showed up the next day and was like, hey, like let's chat, let's see if this is going to work out. Tell me how I can help you, tell me how I can support you, all this kind of stuff. And so it's been a really amazing relationship having her as part of our family, I guess. I consider her part of our family. We have very similar values and views and everything.
The right environment is a learning environment. It's a place where you feel safe to birth. It's a place where you feel safe to just have your stuff come up and have somebody support you and just have that education and know where to get that source of information. The empowered birth community is built to create that right environment. So the next one that you need to get out of your fear is you need to have the right facilitators. So you can't have a childbirth educator who's going to scare the crap out of you. You can't have a doula who is more afraid of you having a birth that's traumatic like what she did than you need somebody who will believe in you. There are some doulas out there that I love them to pieces, but they're not right for every single person because they still have their own traumas and those things can come up. So I'm very intentional about who I take on. If I know that I'm going to be stuck in my stuff, I know I need to pass that client on.
I think the most beautiful part of it too is that she comes in, she assesses the situation, and she just goes right to it. Like there's hardly any questions that she asks me anymore. Like we've gotten to the place now where she's just like, hey, so should I do this chore and this chore like I normally do? And is there anything else that's pressing that you need help with? She does everything from making meals to taking care of Caitlin. Caitlin was very, very clingy when she was born, and which is fine. I mean, I love baby snuggles and stuff, but it was a bit intense because I couldn't put her down and she had to sleep on people. And so I literally was chained to the couch, and that's caused huge tension in our family just because, I mean, Dale needed help with the kids, rightly so. And I needed to do more than just sit on the couch, right? Like I was going mental. So even just having her come in and I'll be like, here you go, have the baby. I need a break. And she snuggles with the baby for a while, which is totally fine. And that's what it was initially, where I'm like, here, take her. I pumped a bottle. You can feed her. I'm going to go take a shower because I haven't showered in 3 days or whatever. I'm like, I'm just going to go, stand in the kitchen because I can. Like, just, stuff like that, where she's really stepped in to support us as a family and me. And she sits there and listens too, because there's been so many times where it's just me and her and the baby. And so she sits there and she listens to me vent, or if I need a shoulder to cry on, or she's helped me process the certain aspects of the birth with Caitlin and some fallout from all of that, with relationships. And just I had no idea, honestly, absolutely no concept of what a postpartum doula does, or even really what a doula does. And she's proven to me that she's worth her weight in gold. Like, she's just amazing. I can't speak, like, if any of you are listening out there, I cannot recommend more to get a postpartum doula. Like, it is the best thing. If you are registering for something for your baby or like for your family, get them to pay for a postpartum doula. It is the best gift in the whole world. Like, you will thank me and your lucky stars that you brought in this person to help you, because postpartum is no joke. I've done it 3 times and it's still no joke. And you really have to interview. Like, I was fortunate at this first one that we got, like, that Lisa worked out perfectly. And she even said it too. She's just like, wow, she said, I've been so fortunate that all my families we've really gelled together. She said, but it doesn't always work that way, right? You have to find that right fit, that symbiotic relationship where, the postpartum doula can step in as almost like a family member, and that the rhythm is good, that they can pick up on your family's unique rhythms and your unique flow with how you do things, because that's really important. Because I know that I'm sure you run your household way differently than I run my household, right? And there's because my family also has children with special needs, that was another huge, part of the interview process, and trying to determine if she was going to gel with my other kids as well. So no, but she's definitely worth it.
So the right facilitator cannot scare the crap out of you. You can't have a doula who's still stuck in their trauma and is unable to be that safe space and container for you. You can't have a childbirth educator who's only giving you the stuff that's going to scare the crap out of you. And you really can't have a care provider who is basically trying to scare you so that you follow their plan. Any care provider who makes you feel afraid or anxious is not the right one for you.
The nurse that I had was not the best nurse, but that was fine. Like, we knew what we were doing. We knew what we wanted. And actually, before we left the house, I said to the doula, I don't want them to do anything to me, because I knew that she was going to be born. Like, it was imminent. And I knew that they were going to have their checklist, that they were going to have their list of things that they wanted to do when I got there, including continuous monitoring and giving me an IV and antibiotics and all of that. And I knew that she was coming any minute, and I didn't need any of those things. So before we left, I said to her, I don't want them to do anything to me. So then when we got there, like, my memory of this part is a little bit fuzzy, because I was really just focused on my contractions and not really focused on what was happening in the room. But apparently the nurse wanted to do a vaginal exam, and we were like, no vaginal exam. She was like, well, I need to do a vaginal exam to see if she's admittable. And the doula said, oh, she's admittable. And then she said, well, I need to do a vaginal exam to see if I need to call the doctor. And the doula said, oh, you should call the doctor. And then, I don't know, I was just standing in the room having my contractions. And then the doula said to me, okay, let's like at home, you were the most comfortable sitting on the toilet. So do you want to go sit on the toilet? And I said, yeah, okay. And so we go into the bathroom and she had like little candles like set up. I don't even know where she found the time to do this, but she had already had the bathroom all set up. It was like she had the lights down and so like I sat in there, and then the nurse wanted to check my blood pressure. She tried to check my blood pressure while I was having a contraction. So that wasn't going to work very well. And I think she tried to check it a couple times. And then she wanted to draw blood. And I was like, no, you're not going to. How are you going to draw blood? Like, I'm pushing a baby out right now. How are you going to draw blood? No. Like, you can do that later. And I found out later that she wanted to draw blood to check my blood type in case I needed blood in case I was having a C-section. And I was like, no, like, I'm pushing the baby out right now. Like, which part of this do you not understand? And then she wanted me to stand up. Oh, she wanted to turn the lights on in the bathroom, which we did not let her do. And then she wanted me to stand up because she had the Doppler in her hand. She wanted to try to find the baby's heart rate, which she could not find because the baby was no longer like up here. The baby was coming out, which she really like, she clearly didn't believe us that I was pushing a baby out.
So the thing is that you need to know that your partner has fears, and you need to be able to sit with those fears, and you need to not let those fears control you. Same with your friends, same with your family, same with the mom groups, same with everybody in your support network. You need to recognize that they have to be able to either sit with their fears, or you have to be able to have enough of a strong mindset, enough of a strong education, enough of the conviction in yourself that even when they start to get scared, you can actually help them through it and recognize that their fears is not your truth.
I think he had some reservations at first. He wasn't too sure. He knows that we wanted the baby to be born at home. And he wanted everything natural like it should be. But I think helping you when he would jump in on the meetings and ask his questions really just made him feel so much better, like the reassurance and that support, and his, okay, what is my role is what he asked you. What am I supposed to do? So you just telling him like what his role is and what he should be doing really helped him a lot, and that really did make a big difference, I believe, in the whole labor process and the support that he gave me.
And so I stood up and she tried to find the heart tone and she wasn't able to, and then she left the room. She left the room completely. And the doula said, okay, do you want to sit back down? And I was like, no, like there's no sitting at this point. Like the baby is coming out and I'm going to be standing for this. And then like I pushed. I like 2 pushes, and then I just felt something come down, and Tony said, is that the head? And then I was like, okay, I can't catch this baby on my own, because originally that was our plan, was for me to catch the baby. And I was like, I'm not gonna be able to catch her because I'm standing now. And they're like, don't worry about that, we're gonna help you. And then I had another contractions and 2 pushes, and she came flying out, and all 3 of us caught her at once.
So this is what I do with my clients, is that a lot of them, they've had previous traumatic cesareans and they've had previously traumatic inductions. And so I say, okay, so you've already had this experience and there's still that doubt inside of you that maybe this might happen again. And maybe it might, who knows? We don't know what's going to happen. You might need to have another C-section. You might need to have another induction. A complication might come up again, but you already know what happens when you weren't in control. So what if you took more responsibility? If you took 100% responsibility in this outcome, if you said, okay, I have to have a C-section, how can I make it better? How can I make it a better experience? What do I need to feel safe? And once you do that, once you recognize that even if that worst case scenario happens, that you'll be okay, that you've got a plan, that's the magic. That's the ninja move. Okay. So I actually teach my clients how to have a backup plan and a backup plan for their backup plan. And Jenny did this, and Rebecca did this, and Lisa did this. And I had backup plans for backup plan. But the fact is that when you have that, it's a safety net for you, because then you know that, okay, if this thing doesn't work, that's okay. I can pivot. I'm happy to give you some resources. If you've got a question, that's what I'm here for. You can also send me a DM, just send me a message and I'll help you. Like, you can see, like, all those books. I've read those books. I have an entire network at my disposal within the birth community. Someone will have an answer to your question. And Jenny can help you, and Rebecca can help you, and Lisa also has things that she's brought to our Take Charge of Birth program, which is my coaching program. And like, we helped each other out. We had an incubator of support. That's what we did.
Most important thing for me was really the mindset stuff. And like, believing in yourself, believing you can do it, remembering what's true for you in those really difficult moments, and you will have them. Remembering what you want and what you can have, and the answer is you can have whatever you want. And a big part of mindset is having the right support, because it's really hard to navigate when you're on your own and you don't have that other voice reminding you of those things. You know, a lot of people, they ask their friends and they ask their family members, and they really don't get the answer. Sometimes even their spouse, they ask their spouse and their spouse says, oh, well, you know, you said you would compromise on this thing here. It's like, no, you don't need to compromise. This is your birth. You're the person who's birthing this baby. You're the person who's living with the consequences. You're the person who is literally sacrificing your body for this. And the other person is not, they're not the one who needs to heal physically from this experience, or breastfeed the baby and like literally feed them from your body. So you don't need to compromise on any of this stuff. And it's really important to have that right support. And your spouse might not be able to be that support, especially if it's their first baby, because they are just as inexperienced as you are, and they don't have that right education necessarily, and they have different priorities. Like, they're going to be really focused on you, and they're not necessarily going to be able to advocate for you. Or maybe they are able to advocate for you. Tony was actually an amazing advocate for me the second time around, because we had such a bad experience. And having that doula there, like, I could not have gotten through that active labor without having a doula. And just having that extra support is so important. And sometimes your friends and sometimes your mom isn't going to be the right support for you. So just personally, in my experience, it's better to have the support of someone who is an advocate and someone who is a birth worker and someone who does have that right education, understands the system, understands birth, and understands the physiological aspect of birth, and understands the healthcare system and how the healthcare system can really derail you. And it's actually a really hard thing to achieve, is a birth without interventions. It's very difficult to achieve because the system is set up to foil you at every turn. And our culture is set up to foil you at every turn. And the mom groups and the Facebook groups, they're gonna tell you what they did. It's not necessarily gonna be what's right for you or what's best for you. And asking them their experience isn't necessarily going to inform you of what your experience is going to be, because it's so individual.
Amazing. And then my boys got to be here, you know, they were here right after, or shortly after he was born. They were back home. So they got to see their baby brother as soon as he was born. My oldest didn't get to see, he had to wait 3 days because my second was, of course, in the hospital, and they wouldn't allow visitors because it was flu season, and it's always something with the hospitals. But I'm just proud of myself within those few months and everything that I've learned. Like, I didn't know I had all of that in me to fight for my rights, basically, as a human, pretty much, you know, that they don't tell you, you know. There's so many, even the doctor's appointments, I'm like, no, I won't be doing that, but thank you, you know. Just the information. Even now I'm still learning a lot. So I definitely want to be a doula now. Looking into possibly later on, being a midwife, because we don't really have a lot of that support here. And even being a midwife, I can, you know, let my clients just do it on their own and not interfere with their birth, but just be there in the background. You know, if you need me, I'm here, but you do you. So, you know, like, I don't have that support here, especially in my area. And I think just in general, even not just in the States, but probably in Canada too, where there's not that support. Don't hesitate. Don't, like, just don't. Just do it. And like Lisa said, run, don't walk, run. You won't know unless you do it. So if you're thinking, just do it. Don't wait.
I guess the biggest piece of advice is, you know, take a chance on this course, on this group. Like, there's nothing to lose, honestly, but everything to gain. And I mean, I was skeptical coming in, I'll admit it. I think maybe because I was so far along, and also because I'm like, oh, I've done this, I've had 3 kids. And it totally wasn't that at all. Like, it definitely exceeded my expectations, in every sense, and still is, because it's an ongoing thing. It's, you know, it's friendships, and it's, you know, connection and support. And I didn't really fathom that I could have that kind of support, long distance too. I think that was the other component for me. As much as I would love to be in the Lower Mainland with you guys, which would be awesome, it was great to have support, any kind of support, and it's worth the investment into yourself and into your, you know, your body and everything. Like, learning so much about your physiology, and also just who you are as a person, because I really, and you know, we've had lots of conversations about this, that, you know, it's not all about like rah women empowerment, all that kind of stuff. It's not a cult. It's nothing crazy. It's ultimately about the fact that in birthing situations, we really have our power stripped from us in so many ways. And we don't even realize it. We had no idea. I had no idea. And even going through this process with you guys and going into the hospital and having the birth that I didn't want, I recognized all of it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that this is happening. And who knows, like it may inspire, whoever is joining this program, it may inspire you to do like your own, version of this, or, empower other women and be involved in some capacity that will really impact people and change the world, rah, rah. Like, I don't know. I don't know what else to say on that. I just feel like this is a very meaningful program. And you're making this into a very, very loving, very supporting, very inclusive environment, which is amazing. So, it's definitely worth any investment, time, money, energy, everything, to come through the end and have made friendships, but also to have, gain strength that you may not know that you needed to gain or regain in some cases. In my case, definitely regain, and recognize that, wow, I gave my power away a long time ago and now I need to get it back. So don't walk, run to take the program, run to do this. Yeah, you won't regret it. That's all I can say.
So if you do have any of those fears come up, you've got the right environment here. You've got the right education right here. You've got the right facilitators right here, and you've got the right support right here. And now we're going to cultivate your mindset so that you can go out and you can have your empowered birth. Because oftentimes what I find happens is that you have everything right, but then your partner goes and screws it up. And they don't mean to. They don't mean to screw it up, but they're scared and they want to protect you. So when they end up derailing your birth plan, that can also cause disconnect in your relationship and cause mistrust in your relationship. You lose that connection. You lose that support. You feel betrayed by your own partner, and they're feeling absolutely so guilty because when they find out that they actually did something that caused you to have that traumatic experience, they feel that. I have so much planned. I believe in giving as much value as I possibly can. I believe in you having an empowered birth. I know what it can do for you. And I know that this experience is just going to be just mind-blowing. It's just going to be revolutionary for you. And it's going to allow you to have a more empowered motherhood. It's going to allow you to show up strong in your life, and you're going to be able to have anything you want. I can't wait to see what you do with this. And I love you. I'll talk to you soon.